I never expected my life to change so dramatically after my grandfather's funeral. We were close, but the rest of the family made sure I felt like an outsider. When he passed, my aunts and cousins whispered I would inherit nothing. They were wrong. Behind their cold stares and fake smiles, my grandfather had been watching them and planning. He left me not just money, but something far more valuable, the truth about family. Before I get into my story, where are you watching from today? Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have had your back. Growing up, my grandfather, Lawrence Turner, was my hero. A self-made real estate developer from Chicago, he built his fortune from nothing but determination and vision. While the rest of the family saw him as a bank account, I saw the man behind the success. Every weekend during my childhood, we had our ritual. Saturday mornings meant breakfast at Johnny's Diner, where Grandpa would order the same thing, black coffee, eggs over easy, and wheat toast. As I grew older, those breakfasts evolved from him telling me stories to sharing business wisdom. "Ibrahim," he would say, leaning forward with that intense look in his eyes, "the buildings I own are just concrete and steel. The real legacy is what you build in here." He would tap his temple, then his heart. Those moments defined our relationship. While my cousins Jared and Stephanie received expensive gifts and lavish vacations, I got something different time. We spent hours in his workshop, where he taught me to build birdhouses and repair furniture. During fishing trips to Lake Michigan, he shared life lessons between catches, patience, and observation. Ibrahim. These skills apply to more than just fishing. The family never understood our bond. My Aunt Diane, my father's sister, would roll her eyes whenever Grandpa bragged about my artwork or school achievements. "Lawrence, you spoil that boy," she would say, though. The only material thing he ever spoiled me with was paying for my college education, something that caused a family uproar. Uncle Rick, Diane's husband, was particularly vocal. A failed businessman himself, he constantly sought loans from my grandfather while criticizing my choice to study graphic design. "Art will not pay the bills," he would declare at family gatherings, despite his own ventures consistently collapsing. "Ibrahim needs to learn something practical." My cousins followed their parents' lead. Jared, with his business degree, but no ambition, and Stephanie, who cycled through expensive hobbies like fashion design and interior decoration without committing to anything, treated me like an intruder. "You know," Stephanie once whispered at Thanksgiving dinner, "Mom says you are only around because Grandpa feels guilty about your dad." My father had died when I was 10, a devastating loss that left my mother Amelia and me struggling financially and emotionally. Though kind and hardworking, my mother was always kept at arm's length by the Turners, treated like an outsider, despite her 15-year marriage to my father. The family gatherings at Grandpa's mansion were exercises in discomfort. I would watch as Aunt Diane paraded her latest jewelry, Uncle Rick boasted about business connections, and my cousins competed for attention. Meanwhile, I sat quietly, the scholarship art student, whose freelance design work barely paid rent. "When will you get a real job?" became the family's favorite question asked while they lived off generous loans from Grandpa that everyone knew would never be repaid. Through it all, my grandfather remained my champion, though his support often made things harder with the rest of the family. Their resentment grew, as did my bond, with him, creating a divide that widened year after year. After college, struggling to establish my graphic design career, I lived in a small apartment across town. While my cousins received down payments for houses and seed money for businesses, I insisted on making my own way. This seemed to both impress and frustrate my grandfather. "Your independence is admirable," he told me during one of our Saturday breakfasts. "But remember, accepting help is not weakness if it comes without strings." I was too proud to accept more than our regular meals and his unwavering encouragement. Little did I know how much that decision would come to matter. When Grandpa's health began to decline 8 months before his death, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. What started as occasional forgetfulness progressed to significant cognitive decline and physical weakness. Through it all, I visited nearly every day, reading his favorite mystery novels aloud, or simply sitting with him in comfortable silence. Aunt Diane suddenly became the devoted daughter, though her visits always coincided with the doctor's rounds. She began limiting my access, claiming my visits agitated him, though nurses told me differently. "He lights up when you come," Ibrahim, his favorite nurse, Maria, confided. "The others just talk about estate planning while they think he cannot hear." I caught snippets of these conversations myself. Uncle Rick discussing property transfers before it is too late. Stephanie asking about Grandma's jewelry collection. Jared inquiring about stock portfolios. Not once did they ask about his comfort or memories or wishes. During my last meaningful conversation with Grandpa, he was having a rare moment of complete lucidity. His hand, thin and spotted with age, gripped mine with surprising strength. "Remember the lighthouse, son?" he said, his eyes clear and focused. I nodded, though confused. We had visited many lighthouses during our trips to Michigan shores. "Which one, Grandpa?" "You will know when it matters," he replied, before drifting back into the fog that increasingly claimed his mind. He died peacefully 3 weeks later, with me at his bedside reading Hemingway. The others were attending a charity gala, their phones turned off despite my calls. They arrived in their formal wear tiers, suddenly appearing when they entered the room, though their eyes remained dry and calculating. The funeral was held at Trinity Episcopal Church, my grandfather's spiritual home for over 50 years. Dark wood pews filled with business associates, friends, and family, though I noticed how few people from the family actually shed genuine tears. I delivered a eulogy, focusing on Grandpa's character rather than his achievements or wealth, sharing stories of our fishing trips and the lessons he taught through simple activities like building birdhouses or fixing old radios. With each personal anecdote, I could feel Aunt Diane's glare intensifying. During the reception line, several of Grandpa's old friends pressed cards into my hands, many containing checks to help me during this difficult time. Somehow, Aunt Diane always appeared at my elbow at these moments. "I will take those," she would interject, snatching the envelopes. "I am handling all the estate matters now." The gathering at Grandpa's mansion afterward was tense and uncomfortable. Crystal glasses clinked as relatives and business associates shared polite conversation while eyeing the artwork and antiques like appraisers. I overheard Jared and Stephanie discussing who would get the vacation house in Michigan. "Obviously, Mom and Dad," Stephanie said, sipping champagne. "Ibrahim certainly will not need it. He can barely afford his apartment." Seeking solace from their materialistic discussions, I slipped away to Grandpa's study. The leather chair still held his shape, and his reading glasses rested on top of an open book. I ran my fingers along his desk, remembering how he would sit here creating meticulous plans for buildings that would define Chicago's skyline. On the bookshelf, I noticed a framed photograph I had never seen before, Grandpa and me standing in front of the Mackinac Island Lighthouse during our trip 5 years prior. I was in my early 20s then, and we had spent a perfect day cycling around the island, eating fudge, and exploring the historic lighthouse. I remembered how oddly contemplative he had been that day, asking unexpected questions about my hopes, values, and how I defined success. Now I wondered if that conversation had meant more than I realized at the time. A week after the funeral, I received a text message from Jared about a family-only meeting with Grandpa's lawyer. When I replied asking for details, the response was blunt. "No need for you to come, just immediate family." That same evening, disaster struck. A pipe burst in my apartment building, flooding my unit and destroying most of my possessions. With nowhere to stay and limited savings, I swallowed my pride and called Aunt Diane. "I am sorry to hear about your situation," she said, her voice anything but sympathetic. "But we are in the middle of important estate matters. Perhaps you should call a friend." Uncle Rick got on the line. "Maybe it is time to get a real job, Ibrahim. one that provides enough security to handle life's emergencies without asking for handouts. They hung up before I could remind them I had not asked for money, just a temporary place to stay. Fortunately, my friend Jackson offered his couch, though his studio apartment barely had room for him, let alone a second person. While sorting through my water-damaged belongings, I received an anonymous text message, "You deserve nothing. Stay away from what is ours." My mother, who had moved to Arizona after my father's death, called after hearing about my situation. "They have always been jealous of your relationship with Lawrence," she said gently. "Your father warned me about them years ago. They see everything as a competition for resources." 2 weeks after the funeral, I learned through a sympathetic receptionist at the lawyer's office that the will reading was scheduled for Friday. Despite not receiving an invitation, I decided to attend. What did I have to lose? The law offices of Harrington and Associates occupied the 32nd floor of a downtown high-rise. When I walked into the ornate conference room, the family's reaction was immediate and hostile. "What is he doing here?" Aunt Diane demanded, rising halfway from her leather chair. Marcus Harrington, my grandfather's lawyer for over 30 years, looked confused. Ibrahim was explicitly mentioned in Lawrence's instructions for today. "There must be some mistake," Uncle Rick interjected. "This is immediate family only." Lawrence Turner considered his grandson immediate family, Marcus replied, firmly gesturing for me to take a seat. I sat at the far end of the table, avoiding eye contact with Aunt Diane and the others. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The reading proceeded predictably at first. The vacation home in Harbor Springs went to Aunt Diane and Uncle Rick. Grandfather's collection of classic cars worth substantial money went to Uncle Rick. Family jewelry was divided between Stephanie and other female relatives. Jared received stocks and bonds. My turn came near the end. To my grandson, Ibrahim Marcus, read, "I leave my fishing equipment, my collection of first edition Hemingway novels, and the contents of the workshop behind the garage." I nodded, genuinely touched by these personal items that represented our bond. The financial value was minimal compared to what the others received, but these were the things that held our memories. Aunt Diane leaned over to whisper just loud enough for me to hear, "I told you you would get nothing of value. You were never really a Turner." As Marcus began closing the leather portfolio that contained the will, he paused, looking slightly confused. "It seems there is one final addition," he said, extracting a sealed envelope, a codicil added 2 weeks before Lawrence's passing. The family shifted nervously. Any late changes to a will often signaled a significant alteration of plans. "This envelope is marked, 'For Ibrahim's eyes only,'" Marcus announced, walking around the table to hand it directly to me. "This is ridiculous," Aunt Diane protested. "As executrix of the estate, I should be privy to all documents." Marcus shook his head. "The codicil specifically states this portion is separate from the main estate and falls under different instructions." With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Inside was a single key and a note card with coordinates written in my grandfather's shaky handwriting. Below the numbers were 2 words, "Lighthouse Trust." "What does it say?" demanded Uncle Rick. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mr. Turner established a separate trust that falls outside the main estate. The details of this trust are confidential between Ibrahim and the estate, as per Lawrence's explicit instructions." The family erupted in protests, but I barely heard them. "The coordinates." "The lighthouse." Suddenly my grandfather's words made sense. The coordinates led exactly where I suspected, Mackinac Island, specifically to the historic lighthouse we had visited regularly over the years. Despite threats of legal action from Aunt Diane, I took a day off from my job search and made the journey north. The ferry ride to Mackinac Island brought back memories of trips with Grandpa. No cars were allowed on the island, preserving its historic charm with horse-drawn carriages and bicycles as the only transportation. As the ferry approached the dock, I could see the white lighthouse standing sentinel on the rocky shore, just as it had for over a century. The May weather was cool but pleasant as I walked from the ferry landing toward the lighthouse. The journey gave me time to reflect on my grandfather's cryptic message and what might be waiting for me. The lighthouse keeper, an older man named Thomas, recognized me immediately. "You must be Ibrahim," he said, extending a weathered hand. "Your grandfather showed me photos. Said you would come someday." Confused, I shook his hand. My grandfather knew I would come. Thomas nodded, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Lawrence purchased a special arrangement here about 5 years ago, said it was insurance for the future." He led me around the base of the lighthouse to a door I had never noticed during our tours. It was small and painted to match the stonework, nearly invisible, unless you knew what to look for. "Your key should work here," Thomas said, stepping back. The key from the envelope fit perfectly. With a deep breath, I turned it and pushed the door open to reveal a small, immaculate office space built into the base of the lighthouse. A desk with a computer filing cabinets and a video camera setup on a tripod occupied the compact room. "I will leave you to it," Thomas said quietly, closing the door behind him. Heart pounding, I approached the desk. A sealed envelope with my name written in my grandfather's handwriting sat propped against the computer monitor. Inside was a simple note, "Press play, son." I turned on the computer to find a video file ready on the desktop. With shaking hands, I clicked play. My grandfather's face filled the screen. He looked healthier than in his final months, suggesting this was recorded sometime before his illness progressed. "Ibrahim," he began, his voice strong and clear, "if you are watching this, then I am gone, and you have followed the clues I left behind. I always knew you would. You were always the observant one." He shifted in his seat, leaning closer to the camera. "For years I have watched how our family behaves when they think no one is looking. I have seen how they treated you and your mother, how they valued possessions over character, and how they measured love in dollars and cents." He paused, his expression softening. "And I watched you, son, how you refused handouts but accepted guidance, how you worked for everything you achieved, how you visited me, not for what you could get, but for what we could share." My grandfather explained that alongside his public fortune, he had built a separate private portfolio through careful investments. This secondary estate had been placed in a trust with its own set of rules and beneficiaries. "The Lighthouse Trust contains $3.8 million, he said matter-of-factly. "And you, Ibrahim, are the sole beneficiary." I gasped, unable to process the figure. "But this money comes with purpose," grandfather continued. "A portion is for your security, to buy a modest home, establish your design business properly, and never need to worry about a flooded apartment again." He smiled, as if he had somehow foreseen my recent disaster. "The majority, however, is to establish the Lawrence Turner Design Scholarship Foundation. I want you to help talented young people who, like you, have the vision and drive but lack the financial resources to pursue their creative dreams." Tears streamed down my face as my grandfather detailed his vision for the foundation, how it should operate, and the difference he hoped it would make. "You earned this inheritance, not by blood, but by character," he concluded, "and that Ibrahim has always been the true measure of a person's worth." The video ended with my grandfather's smile, the warm, genuine expression I remembered from our best days together. In a daze, I called Marcus Harrington from the Lighthouse office, who confirmed everything. The trust was legitimate, fully funded, and legally binding. The family could contest it, but the documentation was impeccable. "Your grandfather was extremely thorough," Marcus said. "He anticipated potential challenges and addressed them all. The money is yours, Ibrahim, along with the responsibility he entrusted to you." As I took the ferry back to the mainland, I felt both overwhelmed and strangely peaceful. The lighthouse grew smaller in the distance, but its symbolism had never been clearer. A beacon guiding me forward, illuminating truth in the darkness. When I returned to Chicago, I discovered the family had already begun removing items from grandfather's house, despite Marcus's instructions to leave everything untouched until estate matters were settled. I arrived to find Aunt Diane directing movers to pack up antique furniture, while Uncle Rick examined the wine cellar with a dealer. Jared and Stephanie were going through the library, selecting valuable first editions, including the Hemingway collection that had been specifically left to me. They froze when I entered with Marcus Harrington, who carried a portfolio of legal documents. "What is he doing here?" Aunt Diane demanded, dropping the pretense of politeness entirely. "I have some information that affects all of you," Marcus said calmly. "Perhaps we should sit down." In the living room, surrounded by half-packed boxes, Marcus explained the Lighthouse Trust. With clinical precision, he detailed the $3.8 million account and its beneficiary designation. Account balance, $3,800,000. Beneficiary, Ibrahim Turner, he read from the official document. The color drained from Aunt Diane's face. Uncle Rick's mouth opened and closed without producing words. Jared knocked over a crystal paperweight, while Stephanie gripped the arm of the sofa so hard her knuckles turned white. "This is impossible," Aunt Diane finally sputtered. "Lawrence would never. There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Marcus replied. "The trust was established 5 years ago and amended regularly. Lawrence was of sound mind and body when he created it. We are his family," Uncle Rick protested. "His actual blood relatives." "And Ibrahim is his grandson," Marcus countered. "Also a blood relative." The atmosphere in the room transformed in minutes. Shock gave way to desperate calculation behind their eyes. "Ibrahim," Aunt Diane said, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. "We may have had our differences, but family should stick together. Your grandfather would want that." Uncle Rick quickly joined in. "I have always admired your creative spirit. In fact, I have been considering a new business venture that could use someone with your artistic talents. Perhaps we could discuss investment opportunities." I looked at these people, my supposed family, and felt a strange sense of clarity. For years I had longed for their acceptance and validation. Now, faced with their transparent greed, I felt only pity. "I think it is best if we maintain our distance," I said quietly. "As you pointed out at the funeral, I was never really a Turner in your eyes. Now you listen here." Uncle Rick began, his friendly facade crumbling. "That money belongs to this family. We will contest this so-called trust. We will fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if necessary." "You are welcome to try," Marcus interjected. But Lawrence anticipated this reaction. The documentation is exemplary, his mental competence well established, and his wishes crystal clear. A legal battle would be expensive, lengthy, and ultimately futile. They left in a storm of threats and accusations, vowing to contact their lawyers immediately. True to their word, they did file a contest to the trust, but as Marcus predicted, the case was dismissed within months. Their subsequent appeal met the same fate. The following year was transformative. After properly grieving my grandfather, I set about fulfilling his vision. I established the Lawrence Turner Design Scholarship Foundation, creating opportunities for talented students from disadvantaged backgrounds to pursue careers in graphic design, architecture, and visual arts. With a portion of the inheritance, I opened a small design studio in downtown Chicago, focusing on helping small businesses and nonprofits with their branding and marketing needs. Without the constant pressure of financial insecurity, my creativity flourished, and the business grew steadily. I purchased a modest but comfortable home in a neighborly area of the city, complete with a workshop in the basement that I modeled after my grandfather's. There, I continued his tradition of building birdhouses, each one a meditation on the lessons he had taught me. Some traditions remained sacred. Every Saturday morning, I still went to Johnny's Diner for breakfast, black coffee eggs over easy and wheat toast. Sometimes I imagined him sitting across from me, nodding with approval at what I had built with his gift. 3 years after grandfather's death, I ran into Cousin Stephanie at a charity event. She looked uncomfortable but approached me anyway. "You look well, Ibrahim," she said, awkwardly shifting her weight. "Thank you. How is everyone?" I asked politely. She hesitated. "Managing. Dad's business ventures still have not panned out. Mom is." "Well, Mom," she paused before adding, "they were wrong about you. We all were. I wanted you to know. I see that now." It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever receive from any of them. I nodded, appreciating the gesture, but maintaining the boundaries I had established. The foundation grew to become one of the most respected in its field, supporting dozens of students each year. Many of the scholarship recipients came to work at my studio as interns, creating a community of creative talent that my grandfather would have admired. My relationship with my mother, Amelia, strengthened during this time. I brought her back to Chicago from Arizona, setting her up in a comfortable condo near me. The weekly dinners we shared healed old wounds and created new joyful memories. The lighthouse became a place of pilgrimage for me. Each year on my grandfather's birthday, I visited Mackinac Island to sit in that small office and reflect on his wisdom and foresight. Eventually, I donated the space to the Historical Society with funds for its preservation, keeping only the key as a personal reminder. Through it all, I worked to find peace without bitterness. The money could have easily corrupted me, as it had the others turning me vindictive or self-important. Instead, I focused on the responsibility that came with it, to create opportunities to build something meaningful, to live with integrity. In the end, my grandfather's final gift was not the money. It was the lesson that wealth can reveal character but cannot create it. That true family is built on love and respect, not DNA. That the most valuable inheritance is wisdom, not wealth. The Turner family never spoke to me again after their legal challenges failed. I heard updates through mutual acquaintances, bankruptcies, divorces, continued infighting over dwindling resources. The fortune they had received, substantial as it was, slipped through their fingers without grandfather's guiding hand. Meanwhile, the foundation continued to grow, creating a legacy that would outlast all of us. And in that, I found the greatest satisfaction of all. Have you ever discovered that someone you thought did not value you was actually watching and appreciating you all along? Or have you had to create boundaries with family members who only wanted what you could give them? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not defined by others' recognition of it. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the most important inheritance is not what is written in a will, but what is imprinted on your heart.